Hi, it's afternoon, so I'll say good afternoon. Usually I'm saying good morning because I tend to do these things in the morning. However, I guess I had a crowded morning and it's already 1:45. And I'm going to talk a little bit about world history once again. I think I mentioned it it didn't really coalesce until recently, but a book of sorts that I'm going to be writing and have been writing now. And like I said, it's starting to coalesce. The, uh, the history of England and Western Europe, the working title, from the last glacial maximum to Elgar's variations, which that should slice it. Take your pick, as far as the BC part of it, to the Elgar part, which should be 1900. I think that's when he came out with that. And I'm going to talk about the progress of the book. Now, the book, I'm sure, is going to take a very long time because, I don't really have what do they call it? A deadline. I don't have anything like that. I got nothing. So I'll take my time. I'm having lots of trouble with the Microsoft Word thing. I guess when I got this new laptop, I guess I got it a couple of years ago. I don't know. And I didn't even pick it out. I never get to choose, you know. But I mentioned that I could use a replacement, and this is what I got. And it must have came with a Microsoft Word file application, but it probably, and I was concerned about it, was probably one of those things that would just expire unless you went out and got one with a new license and you paid $300 for it or something like that, 250. So a few months ago, Microsoft Word just was not behaving, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get it to work right. So I more or less gave up, and I'm using, these comme ci comme ça applications, Microsoft Notepad, WordPad, this pad, that pad, every other pad from these godforsaken people. But, so I am stumbling along, writing, trying to save it without losing my work, which I did lose a couple of times because the saving thing is crazy. These people, even though you don't tell them that you want to be working online, they have you connected. And if you don't do certain things right, your work isn't going to get saved. And I still don't know exactly what I got to do, but I'm very cautious and I save it in very specific ways. And for the last, I'd say 4 times, I didn't lose my work. But, listen, that's the price you pay for using these things, Who knows? Eventually, maybe I'll break down and buy the application. But for now, I'm just doing, I think it's WordPad or something. The big problem is I can't make WordPad read back, the work you can do with Microsoft Word. But I'll live with that. I wanted to do that so that I could get it up on YouTube and so you could follow along as I write this thing. I'll figure out a way to do that. Why not? Listen, like I said, I got nothing to lose. I do this any way I damn please. Nobody's going to tell me what to do with my own work, my own creative output. I'll do it as best I can within their rules, their regulations. Obviously, I have to have the file in a certain format. I have to upload it over the internet. I got to do all this stuff. You got to follow some rules. But as soon as they tell me, I want you to wear a blue shirt, I'm going to tell them to take a walk. I'll wear whatever color shirt I want to wear. But that doesn't matter. The point is, the book is moving along. I probably have somewhere. Who knows? I have stuff going. There's words, and it's at this point I can only describe it as a book. It certainly isn't a novel. That's another thing. I don't follow those rules. What a novel has to be. You know, you got to have a character. You got to build up the character. You can't leave the reader guessing or out in the dark. That's a lot of baloney. A lot of baloney. If there's any, and I'll repeat it, and I hope that the author won't get mad at me for mentioning his book, but I always try now that I read Prairie Earth by somebody, I don't know, but he's got Moon in his name. I don't have the book with me right now. I don't think I do. But Prairie Moon, and it's not spelled prairie the way you would think. And the way that book is written, which is, one of the best books I've ever not written, but that I've ever read. And it's definitely not a novel, but it does grab you, I think, and it's eye-opening, and it's not, the person's not trying to lecture to you or anything like that. I wish I could remember his name, but there's something about Moon, in Least Moon something, and I can look it up real quick here. You don't mind, do you? Take a little break here. By the way, you see this painting up here, okay, right to the side of my ear. That's my latest painting, and it's supposed to be representative of 10 or 11 clusters of grapes. And you could probably make it larger on your YouTube presentation. You could get a better look at it. I'm into painting grapes now. Like I may have mentioned, I make my own homemade wine, so what the hell, I might as well paint grapes. But Prairie Moon. Here we go. So it's not Prairie Moon, it's Prairie Earth, ERTH. I know there was a moon in it. The fellow's name is William Least Heat Moon. And if there's one more book you have to read, if you haven't read it, one more book you have to read while you're still on this planet, you have to read Prairie Earth. It's one word, prairie, as you would think, ERTH. So put that on your must-do list. Very good. And surprised I haven't heard more about that book. Maybe everybody has figured out that it's useless and hopeless. The planet is not going to be saved. Anyway, I don't want to be negative or anything, because I still have a glimmer of hope that we may be able to turn this thing around. But unfortunately, I truly believe that the only turning around will be to turn it into more steel, concrete, and glass. More and more and more of that. That's what we're going to have. But anyway, getting back to this book, which will be the third book, and so what I'm finding out is that the the authorities, the experts on this, are not in total agreement on anything. They're not in agreement on when the first humans, true humans, are on the scene in England and Western Europe. They have their opinions. They're pretty close, but you may get this point of view, you may get that point of view. And what you do if you're a person like me, who's already done a little bit of looky-see into this, and I have certain dates and ideas in my head already, and they're based on fairly reasonable authors and books that are reliable, So based on that and based on what I'm pulling out now, what I'm pulling out is that essentially, even in places like England, and I take it Western Europe as well, but certainly I came across referenced in England. You can go back 500,000 years. This is a fairly long time back in the let's call it the anthropological record, okay? Because we are talking about mankind. That's, I'm not trying to look at how old are the Cambrian rocks in England. I'm not looking for that. That's been well documented. Yeah, I don't need to look at that anymore. But when did people that we could say are in some way resemble the behavior of modern man come on the scene in England and in Western Europe? So I came across some reference which stated 500,000 years there were very primitive, almost homos. I want to call them hunter-gatherers on the scene in England and in Western Europe. But the reference to Western Europe is a tentative, because when I read, they were talking about Europe, but I assume at the time there was no water between England and Western Europe, so the individuals were walking back and forth. The underground, the tunnel under the channel hadn't been built yet. So is that channel is that underground under the channel or under the yeah, it's under the channel. Okay, that's the English Channel. So now that covers a lot of ground, 500,000 years. And what I also get is that there were very, very tiny, minuscule populations. So whoever was running around there was trying to kill something was probably an individual, who maybe, or maybe not, had a female with him, and maybe some young'uns with him. He maybe even had a second hunter, but I'm not getting a warm and fuzzy that we had clusters of hunter-gatherers who were feeding off of each other in a symbiotic fashion, in a socialized fashion to try and kill the big critters. Okay, that comes around later, and I'm much later on. All right, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. So, and I'm just trying to give you a rough outline of what I'm seeing. Okay, so they're living in at least I came across 500,000 years ago, and they were not some pre-something, they discovered a tooth and they said this is Homo habilis man, okay? these are definitely, and I kind of remember them saying Neanderthal-like, which I took that with a grain of salt. But, listen, Neanderthal is all over the map. You find them 75,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, 200,000. You find them all over the map. So, I'm not throwing that piece of evidence away. I'm keeping it I'm keeping it for further use. So, I don't think there's much changing going on, except ice age is coming and ice age is going until you get to the last glacial maximum, which is around 10,000. And then between 10,000 BC and Julius Caesar, which is about 50 BC, all right, what you get in England is, for most of that time, still small, tiny population numbers, okay? And they live in tiny, if at all, little groups. So much so that throughout England, maybe you would see 2,000 or 4,000 spots on a map that indicate they have found evidence of clusters of people living here and there and everywhere. And who are these people? Well, the best they're telling us is that they were the original Britons, the originals, who predated the Celts, who predated the Anglo-Saxons, who predated everybody, the Normans. All those people come much later on. So there was this background, the Picts and the Scotties and all these folks. So there was this background of indigenous people, hunter-gatherers. They were not farmers yet, hunter-gatherers in England. And they probably lived a most pitiful existence. It was extreme cold in the first part of that 10,000 years. And they didn't have much in the way of conveniences or, comfort, anything like that. But they survived. And then the people, then after that, people start coming in, Anglo-Saxons, the Jutes, the Normans, the Vikings, you name it, the Picts, Picts, I believe, the Scotties, Scottis, we get the word Scotland from. And the Picts, by the way, were it's pointed out, they're pretty barbaric. And they stepped by it, and I think that they wound up being a major indigenous people in Ireland as well. So to my mind right now, what I'm seeing is a very backward group of people living in England. Whatever I say about England, you could almost feel it's similar stuff going on the mainland, but not necessarily the same people or the same genetics. Similar, but not the same. So the big can of worms is what I just mentioned, is the genetics here. Because they're mixed, they're not mixed, they're this, they're that, they're everything. But the thing I wanted to point out, and I'm starting to lose it, was I'm just going to lose it because it was in my head and it's gone now. But the blah, 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 blah. What was I going to say? The people in England, mixed varieties of folks, and certainly weren't farmers. I think there starts to be some evidence of farming in England. I'm going to throw a number out there. something like maybe 4,000 BC or maybe 2,000 BC. I'm not sure. But be that as it may, it's not like in some places on the planet, like in the Indus Valley, 10,000 BC, or in Mesopotamia and Egypt. Okay? So, they took their time about it. One of the things is that the original people there, whether they were a Britain original genetic, totally different type than everybody else, or a little mixture of the Picts and themselves, whatever, we don't know. But one thing was pointed out, that they did not like farming. They wanted to live their hunter-gatherer life, and quite frankly, I don't blame them. Farming is just, that's the first step towards totalitarianism, is farming. Everybody get in step, plant your seeds, make your harvest. When we get the poisons that will kill the earth, use them or lose your farm. Okay? So that was a bad step when everybody listened to everybody else except a few who still wanted to be hunter-gatherers. And they stepped out and they became farmers. First of all, they ruined the earth, these cattle and the sheep and whatever ruined the earth. The people with their plowing and stuff ruined the earth, And then you have to, with that becomes this tremendous population of people. Who needs them? 10 freaking million right now. And before we know it, it's going to be 15. And I think they want 50 billion. I don't want to be here when it's 50 billion. You won't be able to sneeze. You'll be sneezing on somebody's head. Do yourself a favor. Live as fast as you can and get out of here. Anyway, and I'm not telling you to do anything bad. I'm just saying live fast, So your sentence will get over quicker, or at least you'll have the illusion that your sentence on earth is getting over sooner rather than later. So pretty much this is what I'm finding out. And it's not good. It is just not good what I'm finding out. The numbers, the dates, and also it points, and this is always crucial to what I'm looking for. It's earliest mention of any grouping of people. The earliest is that in those groups, just spontaneously, there would be a leader. And usually that leader was the biggest and the baddest who could beat down the rest of the folks, okay? And that leader and the people closest to him would over time become the elites, the ruling classes. Now, in the beginning, these were small groups of people, 100, a few hundred, but there was always, the very beginning, some sort of big shot ruler. Okay, it didn't take until the Norman conquest for this to happen. It didn't take until Henry VIII started, moving his big fat body around. No, it took immediately, when it was no longer the single hunter-gatherer heaving his spear into some large critter. As soon as it was 2, 3, 4, say, couples gathered together. Out of that, you got a leader. And the leader was usually the biggest and baddest of the group. And why? Because anybody who didn't want to go along with him, he would just probably kill him. And it'd be done with that amount of dissension. So we can know from the very beginning that society was always structured in some sort of hierarchical fashion. Just no getting around it. As much as you'd like to see these people who think they know better than everybody else running the planet, we're just stuck with it. That's the way it is, That's the way it is. And I don't care if it was African kings working in West Africa 800 years ago, or the people in the Nile Valley, the pharaohs, the Khans, and all that stuff in the sandy places, the czars, all that stuff. They always had to segregate it out and make some the rulers over everybody else. And, they'll argue till they're blue in the face. Well, what are you going to do? Somebody's got to tell everybody else what to do. Well, they never tried any alternative. And I'm not talking about communism or any of that crap. There's, first you have to born decent genetics. You have to born it. People who are born to be naturally desirous of living a peaceful, nourishing existence. And we're getting so far away from that now in the current times. So far away from that. We are worse today than we were 1,000 years ago, as far as being people. I mean, just worse. We're worse. We're terrible. I'm sure if I could go all the way back to Sodom and Gomorrah, or whatever those two towns were, that were supposed to be so bad that God sent some bad guy to kill them all. I'm sure that they would have been considered holy people compared to what we got running around today. So, and I thank my lucky stars that I am so isolated from all of that garbage. Oh, God, it's just heinous. So anyway, the book is progressing. I try to write a little bit every day, but I don't. Maybe during the course of a week there will be at least 4 to 5 days that I'll sit down in front of this stupid PC and try to do something. But every day I'm doing my research. That's the key. The key is to do your research. And you're not making any headway until you feel like you're living in the subject you want to write about. That's why I said it took me a long while to get started here, because I had to read. And then finally, I'm living in that time. I'm living in it, in those places. And now I can write. Because interestingly enough, I'd spend a good deal of my adult life reading more about things. The first large grouping that I read about were the North American Indians. A little bit of the South American Indians, so on, but mostly the North American Indians. And as I continued to read, I started, because of my time in Vietnam, I started to be interested in the Far East, Indonesia, all those places, India, Burma, World War II, so on and so forth. I was always perplexed with World War II because of the one battle in the Solomon Islands, Guadalcanal. That was the name of an island. And I was saying to myself, how could they have a canal over there? It just doesn't make sense. And after years of looking into it, I found out that actually the island is named after a place back in Spain that's called Guadalcanal. So that's how that is. And I always thought that the Solomon Islands would be something that I would like to see, although I'm taking, I'm not of that mindset anymore. I had thought that the Admiralty Islands, which is way off to the western end of the Solomons, was a place like nowhere on earth, that was still isolated. It's not true anymore. It's been visited by the the travel agents and the tourist agencies. So, so that was the second or third huge focus. You read a lot about that. But I had paid very little attention to Europe, including England. Very little attention. Now, I did pay attention to Russia because Russia was hard to extract from the Far East and the Oriental and all that stuff, because they are, to a certain degree, Oriental in nature. So I had to get some insight into Russia, and I'm glad I did. I really admire their culture, their history. I mean, these people had the great writers, great artists, great musicians, great composers, So what are you going to do? My violin teacher was Russian. She was what they call a Russian emigre. And she was really good. I mean, there's no way that I should have been studying under her, but I had some connections. And I studied under her. And she was fabulous. And so I got to be there with a true violinist, somebody that played the instrument correctly and passed those little nuances on to me. And I'm really glad she did that. I mean, that was wonderful. And I hope she's still with us. I don't know. I could look into that. Look in the magic box, I'd find out. But important things that she taught me how to hold the violin correctly and how to bow correctly. So, and you know what? That's part of history. Is and you know this, I'm sure, that the things of a culture, whether they're a refrigerator or a fine cello. I mean, these are the things that describe a people, and so you get that benefit too. Anyway, so that's where I am with the third book, and it'll be a long time coming. I want it to be. I want it to take 2 or 3 years. I want it to be long. I want it to be 1,000 pages, and we'll see. Maybe by then they'll figure out how you can get a book published after you've paid to get it published, and they pull it out and say, "Oh no, you can't. We're not doing this." After it's already been published, and a few books actually sold. So, and then they say, "Oh no, we're not doing this anymore." So maybe by 2 or 3 years they'll figure out how to do it without reneging. Maybe. And plus, maybe I'll figure out a better way to put the book in its entirety, or any of these books in their entirety, up on Bluebird YouTube, and see how that goes. I don't know anything, links, this, that, the other thing. Those are all technical aspects of this phenomenon, and I'm never interested in the technical aspects, but you gotta learn a few of them. Are you looking at my paintings? They're very nice. Yes. So I'm going to say bye-bye now, and I'm going to click this off. Okay, I think you click over here.